and understanding. We, thine unworthy servants, here gathered together in thy name, do most humbly beseech thee to send down thy heavenly wisdom from above, to direct and guide us in all our consultations. And grant that we, having thy fear always before our eyes, and laying aside all private interests, prejudices, and partial affections, the result of all our counsels may be to the glory of thy blessed name, the maintenance of true religion and justice, the safety, honor, and happiness of the king, the public weal, peace and the tranquility of the island, and the uniting and knitting together of the hearts of all persons and estates within the same, in true Christian love and charity, one towards another, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
You may be seated. This Honorable House now resumes its sitting. I wish to welcome all to the sitting of the Honorable House of Representatives for today, Tuesday, May 12, 2026. As always, it is an honor and privilege to do so. Today, we'll be hearing from the Minister of Health and Wellness, as well as the Member of Parliament from St. Andrew Western, who will be making their contribution to the sectoral debate. I wish to welcome the team from the Ministry of Health and Wellness. Particularly, I'm seeing P.S. Errol Green to my right, and our Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Jacqueline Besar Mackenzie. Hi, CMO. I think our Chief Technical Director is here as well. And Mr. Ian Stein is here from PAHO. I am helping Minister because I know he usually takes some time out of his presentation to greet and to welcome everyone from the WHO and from PAHO and from his ministry. He's not getting any extra time today. So welcome both to Jamaica. Welcome on behalf of the Ministry of Health and Wellness and our Minister of Health and Wellness to this sitting of Parliament today. I am sure with such a full gallery, there are other members here, both from the constituencies of St. Catherine West Central and St. Andrew Western. Make them welcome. These and all others seated in the gallery, we'd like to welcome you to today's sitting. And for those joining us on the various social media platforms, PBCJ Live, all guests, welcome to the sitting. Call of the roll.
Mr. Clark, Mr. Green, Dr. Holness, Dr. Chang, Mrs. Williams, Mr. Bartlett, Ms. Grange, Dr. Tufton, Mr. Mackenzie, Mr. Montague, Mr. Vaz, Mr. Chuck, Mr. Charles Jr., Mr. Morgan, Ambassador Marks, Mr. Samuda, Dr. Wheatley, Mrs. Cuthbert Flynn, Mr. Terlong, Mr. Witter, Mrs. Dalrymple Filbert, Miss Morrison, Miss Lee, Mr. Donovan Williams, Mr. Main, Miss Crawford, Mr. Delroy Williams, Miss Hamilton, Mr. Sivright, Mr. Azan, Mr. Brown, Dr. Brownberg, Mr. Buchanan, Mr. Bunting, Miss Burchell, Dr. Campbell, Mr. Cousins, Mr. Crawford, Miss Daly, Dr. Dawes, Mr. Goulding, Mr. Gordon, Mr. Hales, Mr. Hines, Mr. Hilton, Mr. Jackson, Miss Jess, Mrs. Malahoo Fort, Mrs. Miller Bennett, Mr. Morris, Mrs. Nita Garvey, Mr. Newell, Mr. Paulwell, Mr. Phillips, Miss Perkis, Mr. Robertson, Mr. Robinson, Dr. Russell, Miss Shaw, Mr. Smith, Mr. Vaz, and Mr. Warmington. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I do not often look up in the gallery and see wife of former Prime Minister, Dr. Eldemar Shearer. Special welcome to today's sitting. I see the Deputy Chair as well for the National Health Fund, former Member of Parliament, Mr. Michael Stern, to my left. And as always, it would appear that we are now often visited by the Senate. Welcome always, whether we refer to you or not, to the sitting of the House, and former Member of Parliament Sharon Hay Webster, who visits us frequently as well. I hope you enjoy today's sitting all. House Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I join in your welcome to all our visitors here today, especially the team from the Ministry of Health, who have really served us well over these years. Madam Speaker, we're going to suspend the agenda and go straight to public business. I know the Minister of Health is ready to go, and we will hear from him today as we continue our sectorial debate, and then we will take the Member of Parliament for St. Andrew Western. So, Madam Speaker, without further ado, could we allow the Minister of Health to start his sectorial presentation?
Members, the question is that we suspend the agenda and move straight to public business for the debate. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. Let's make welcome to his feet the Minister of Health and Wellness. Members?
Madam Speaker, on behalf of Madam Speaker, permission to speak from a seat other than my own.
Permission granted, Minister.
And that's not a part of my time, please.
No, I looked up. Okay. Minister, I'm very serious about your time, okay? So, Minister, use your time very wisely.
Thank you. Madam Speaker, on behalf of my very hardworking Minister of State, Minister Crystal Lee, the Ministry of Health and Wellness fraternity, I want to just begin by paying tribute to a young man who would have sat across from me today, very enthusiastically capturing the moments here in the Parliament. Very ambitious, very hardworking, very young, who tragically passed last week, Wednesday, Madam Speaker, at the University Hospital of the West Indies. Imru Khoury was very instrumental in my social media capture, my team, but also otherwise instrumental in building our nation through the Jamaica Labour Party and other efforts. And I just want to pay tribute to him and to his family and friends, Madam Speaker. May his soul rest in peace. Madam Speaker, today I greet you all with gratefulness and sincerity of purpose. This is my 11th sectorial presentation as Minister of Health and Wellness. I, Madam Speaker, have always tried to serve with humility, recognizing that while much has been achieved, there is much work in progress. A decade of evolving health challenges, Madam Speaker, creates for the ministry and the country moving targets of overcoming challenges, some seasonal, others systemic, others unexpected. Through it all, we have attempted to act, Madam Speaker, in the best interests of Jamaicans under the leadership of the Most Honorable Andrew Holness as Prime Minister, correcting and adjusting where we needed, accepting criticisms when they have been levied as a natural course of our democracy. I want to take this opportunity to thank our healthcare team on their tremendous efforts to protect Jamaicans in the weeks leading up to and in the immediate aftermath of Hurricane Melissa. Madam Speaker, this was a Category 5 storm, as we all know. Over 500,000 people in the 5 parishes directly impacted. Through the National Health Emergency Operations Center, we entertained very quickly over 600 international medical personnel, deployed an additional 500 healthcare workers into the zone, rescued some 96 Jamaicans from life-saving injuries. With the support of the JDF, 10 persons were airlifted from the Black River Hospital, an additional 8 persons in the first 72 hours post-hurricane. Madam Speaker, we attended to some 8,900 persons in makeshift A&Es. We had 3,000 patients in hospital during this period in the first 24 hours. And Madam Speaker, we did so while we had to serve some 3,300 inpatients immediately after the hurricane. All this while some 3,000 workers in the zone were themselves victims of the storm and their family members, and therefore had to be tended to also. We coordinated the deployment of some 42 NGOs. In the first week, we deployed a full-fledged medical hospital in the Black River community, Madam Speaker. 3 other hospitals were deployed in the week, 2 weeks after. Madam Speaker, we deployed 177 public health inspectors to control the predictable outbreak of leptospirosis, and 1,100 vector workers, which prevented what many would have thought would have been the case, prevented the outbreak of the dengue virus. Madam Speaker, these are the facts, and it's a reality that we often overlook. I call on this house today and Jamaica to say thanks to the health team who responded. We are, Madam Speaker, better than most, and sometimes we don't accept or realize it. I want to say thanks personally as Minister on behalf of the government. Madam Speaker, we're building back stronger. We have 3 phases of rebuild. First phase is to restore, which has taken place. Second, to rehabilitate, then to reconstruct. The other 2 phases are work in progress. We have teams in the field doing critical assessment, engineering assessment of our buildings, and also, Madam Speaker, to determine a path going forward to build back even stronger. We are up to the task, Madam Speaker, this government, and we will deliver for the people of Jamaica in building back our infrastructure stronger. Madam Speaker, in the last year, 1.15 million patients were seen at hospitals, 1.596 million visits visits, that is, to health centers. We have continued the trend of shifting visits more to health centers than to hospitals, which is a good thing. We did 44,000 diagnostic tests, 75,000 surgeries, and 770,000 Jamaicans benefited from drugs from the National Drug Serve pharmacies. All of this served by some 24,000 healthcare workers. The challenges persist, Madam Speaker, but most Jamaicans, most of the time, go to a health facility and they are properly served, Madam Speaker, despite those challenges. We will continue to build on this in order to overcome the challenges. Madam Speaker, I'm happy to announce that this financial year is the year, and I want to just allow me to raise my hand and say, thank you, Jesus, God is good. This is the year that the Cornwall Regional Hospital will be open to the people of Western Jamaica and to the public, Madam Speaker. Been a long journey, and the Lord knows why this government is still here, because I don't think the other persons would have known what to do with the challenge. It has been a significant challenge, but we are now on the final stretch. This is the year when the financial year, that is, when Western Child and Adolescent Hospital will be open. This is the year, this calendar year, when 3 of our major rebuild health centers, St. Seaga, Old Harbour, and Greater Portmore, will be open. Madam Speaker, in total, those 3 health centers and 2 hospitals will see some 700,000 visits a year in a new environment, new diagnostic, new bed space, all in support of building back the infrastructure to support the people of Jamaica. Cornwall Regional Hospital will see 430 beds, ICU, 12 operating theaters, ICU and high dependency imaging, Western Child, 220 beds, other specializations, MRI, ICU, and others, Madam Speaker. We will see significant capacity being rolled out during this financial year, and it's long overdue, and I want to thank the people of Western Jamaica for their patience. The same could be said in St. Catherine with the 3 health centers. These health centers are not usual health centers. In Old Harbour, St. Jago, and in Portmore. These are going to see labs, pharmacy services, diagnostic equipment. Madam Speaker, we are unveiling this financial year the new look of health infrastructure, thanks to this government and the leadership of Andrew Holness. And I have not yet spoken about Spanish Town Hospital, Madam Speaker. Mid-next year, the 6-story tower at Spanish Town, the new Spanish Town Hospital, will be unveiled with significant improvements, Madam Speaker, for the people of St. Catherine. I just want to say, Madam Speaker, in terms of health infrastructure, Andrew Holness is indeed the builder, supported by this government and the Cabinet of Jamaica. And we haven't mentioned UWI, KPH, and Bellevue, Madam Speaker. We will speak more to those, but those are all in the making as part of our overall healthcare bill. Madam Speaker, the truth is that health infrastructure tells a part of the story. It's not the whole story. And the truth is, with the health infrastructure will come diagnostics. And so the issues around MRIs and imaging will be accompanied with the opening of these facilities. I won't go there because of time limitations, but I want to mention 2 challenges we face, because we must be sincere about the issues that we have to confront in this phase. Human resources for health, Madam Speaker, is a major challenge. There are critical areas of specialization that we need to replace or to fill vacancies of. Oncology, pediatric, nephrology, psychiatry, burn unit, cardiology, Madam Speaker, just to name a few. Madam Speaker, we are taking some measures now to address that situation, the issue of human resources for health. We are training more specialist nurses. Over 100 are now in training to be deployed this year. The Barwick Memorial Development Scholarship would see some 48 nurses and 33 doctors filling posts this year. The diaspora recruitment continues. Interviews are now taking place. And over the last month, we have signed MOUs with India, Nigeria, and Ghana, which will see both collaboration in training, but also recruitment of those nationalities where needed to come to Jamaica. I want to just say, and say boldly, even at the expense of courting controversy, the future of human resources for health for Jamaica to address the sick profile of our population is going to be multicultural, and it's going to have to be collaborative across borders, Madam Speaker, because even with the expansion of capacity, as we are doing with the expansion of the Kingston School of Nursing and Training Facility, Madam Speaker, the reality is the mobility of healthcare workers makes it very difficult, and the demand for our population makes it difficult. This is why, Madam Speaker, we are launching we have established an international recruitment unit. This has been approved by Cabinet and is set up to manage the cross-border arrangements to fill the vacancies that we have. The other challenge, Madam Speaker, is in infrastructure. It's one thing to build infrastructure. It's another thing to maintain infrastructure. Right. One of the big challenges that we have faced as a country, which led to the collapse of Cornwall Regional Hospital, is that we have maintained the infrastructure we have built. It is penny wise and pound foolish. Madam Speaker, today I'm launching the Health Infrastructure Maintenance Fund and a $1 billion allocation to that fund in order to learn the lessons of the past and to ensure that the infrastructure we build out today will be maintained. Essentially, simply put, in the interest of time, this is a fund that will see us establishing an inventory management system to establish benchmark quality of all our infrastructure, group our infrastructure into clusters, provide servicing manuals for each piece of that infrastructure. We're focusing on mechanical, electrical, plumbing, air conditioning, and HVAC and elevator services. And we'll determine whether we service those routinely in-house or through some outsourcing. I want to use the opportunity, Madam Speaker, to say to service providers, the day of having extended service or being the sole supplier to support the maintenance of our health infrastructure without having inventory in stock, without having the personnel, they have to fly in from Europe, those days are going to come to an end. There will be KPIs in place where if you want to work with health to maintain infrastructure, you must have the expertise and the equipment in order to do so. More will be said on this, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the NHF is the health insurance for the Jamaican people. Yes, there's work to be done, and I heard the opposition leader call for a national health insurance. Let me just say to him and to all concerned that this government has been more sensitive to the demands of Jamaicans when it comes to medication and healthcare support than any other government in history, Madam Speaker. In 2016, there are only 15 categories of illnesses represented by the NHF, meaning medication for Jamaicans through the NHF. Today, 10 years after the Andrew Holness administration, 28 categories of illnesses have been established, being supported by the National Health Fund, Madam Speaker. And the list is on the screen for you all, our education, Madam Speaker. It means that someone who couldn't get medication for prostate cancer or Parkinson's disease in 2016 can now get that medication free with an NHF card or attending to the public health system. The NHF is also one of the best run public bodies in the country, receiving corporate governance awards, Madam Speaker. I want to just recognize them, recognize the management, and I want to come back to the corporate governance and the accountability issues later on. Madam Speaker, I want to just close this section by saying there is no doubt that as it relates to health infrastructure, as it relates to medication, as it relates to human resources for health, over the last 10 years of this government, we have worked hard to deliver. And I think it's important that we recognize that and give support and recognition where it deserves. And it's not about me, it's about the people who are working in the system. And I want to pick them up with, of course, the guidance and support of this government over those years. Madam Speaker, I want to shift quickly now. I want to pivot, do a policy pivot, and there's a little theoretical run-up to the specifics, but I crave your indulgence and those listening to just listen a bit, because we're a new government, meaning a third term. We have done a lot in delivering infrastructure, still a lot more to be done, but there is still an issue that we have to confront, and there's no time like now than to confront that issue. And so, this policy pivot. This is a policy perspective, Madam Speaker, on family and community. Madam Speaker, a critical measurement of the quality of life is the happiness and wellness of individuals and families in communities. Decisions around life are normally driven by what we see, feel, experience, either through those we interact with at home, work, community, or social and other media. Our health centers, Madam Speaker, are at the epicenter of family and community. Public health has always built its critical outreach programs around the nexus of these social groups. From maternal health to aging, the prevention of communicable and non-communicable diseases. We have had many successes, Madam Speaker, the elimination of polio, from immunization to expansion of life expectancy. Those are positives that we must celebrate as a country. Madam Speaker, poverty, however, and inequality, environmental and lifestyle choices, cultures and subculture impacts health outcomes. Health actions must therefore begin early and incorporate seemingly unrelated clinical interventions. To do this, we must look at the enabling institutions that make these interventions possible and effective. I am referring here, and I want us to bear this terminology in mind, the social determinants of health. That's the pivot, and that's where I'm going, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the two most critical institutions to determine the social implications of health are the family and the community. The family that nurtures and forms healthy individuals who are able to contribute to society. The community that creates and sustains normative structures that not only fashion identity, but reinforces positive health decisions and practices. Now, some people may ask, Madam Speaker, what does this have to do with hospital, health center, doctors? Why are you going off on a tangent? Some may ask that. But if you reflect, Madam Speaker, the fact is that the reduction in the effectiveness of the nurturing role of the family has a direct relationship to the preventative strategies of the health system. From prenatal and postnatal care, vaccination coverage, childhood nutrition, sexual and reproductive health, menopause and elder care. The family is integral to the successful staging of any intervention aimed at mitigating the health risk along the life course. I contend, Madam Speaker, and I put it for your consideration here in this House, that it will be very possible to draw causation between the existing constructs of the Jamaican family and many of the issues that impact health outcome of the Jamaican population. Some of these issues include lower than expected vaccine coverage, childhood obesity, early initiation into sex, poor sexual practices, poor work-life balance, mental illness, as well as poor elderly care practices. These challenges, colleagues, exacerbate the economic realities of the Jamaican people and undermine the country's ability to meet our shared vision for the future. The community, Madam Speaker, is another facet of the Jamaican society that has been significantly changed over the years. Issues around technology, issues around collegiality or the lack thereof, the movement towards social isolation and inwardness undermines our ability to be what we often refer to as our brother's keeper. We don't care enough about each other, Madam Speaker, if we are to be honest with ourselves. We are not our brother's keeper. For whatever reason, the environment has made us essentially selfish, self-centered, and really it's just about us. There's no way, that's no way to build a community and to build a nation. This impacts health directly as we experience daily the many instances of trauma related to domestic violence, interfamily violence, or intercommunity violence. Again, what does this have to do with health centers, doctors, and nurses? We see this in the increase of the number of hospital-related social cases, abandonment, the lack of care for elderly and children who are abused by trusted adults and caregivers as symptomatic of a reduction in the level of social capital that were a hallmark of what we used to refer to as our Jamaican-ness, Madam Speaker. Community and community-based values are today threatened and require a new approach. Madam Speaker, We must begin with the enabling environment that supports positive reinforcement of outcomes of our prevention strategy. This must be evidence-based and participatory. Today, I want to present a series of initiatives that will enable families and communities through consultation, research, and family formation and policy formation aimed at supporting a more family and community integrated approach to holistic healthcare. Madam Speaker, to begin with, we have collaborated with the University of the West Indies to do 2 pieces of research. One is around the health center to determine the value and the perception of our health center in our communities. We have over 320 of those because our health centers really represent a stabilizing force within the community. I tell you, even the deviant avoid breaking into the health center because at some point, even through the deviant behavior, they need a doctor and a nurse to offer them some sort of care. So we can leverage that to place more emphasis on developing community. And we want to understand that a little more in the current dispensation. The second study, Madam Speaker, is the misinformation and disinformation, the impact of social media on health choices by the Jamaican population, especially on children under 16 years old, Madam Speaker. The intention, Madam Speaker, is to use this information to look at our policy pivot over the years to come and to essentially attempt to pitch the building of our community and society under this big tent to tackle issues of community and effective prevention strategies. In this regard, Madam Speaker, I'd like to introduce this House and the country to a $500 million community arranged response effort, or $500 million care fund. In this, the ministry will be launching this fund to support community projects linked to our strategies for NCD prevention, Madam Speaker, over the next 2 years. The fund will be managed by the ministry's Enabling Environment in Health and Client Services Division and will seek to work with community-based organizations, faith-based organizations, civil society groups to increase health-seeking behavior, improve and strengthen families to support vulnerable persons like the disabled and elderly, and promote prevention strategies for NCDs along the life stage of course. Madam Speaker, a call for proposal will be issued on June 15, 2026. And I want to just use the opportunity, Madam Speaker, to recognize a number of NGOs in the audience: Watchman Church Leadership Alliance, the Jamaica Family Planning Association, Circle of Jamaica, Jamaica Aid Support for Life, Ebenezer Home, Jamaica Cancer Society, Heart Foundation, Red Cross, Diabetes, Caribbean Institute for Health Research, the Jamaica Union of Conference of Seventh-day Adventists, and the Jamaica Umbrella Group of Churches. Thank you very much for coming. And we invited them because we want them to participate in this community outreach under this Care Fund program. The aim of this fund is to refocus on the family as the main form of social engineering for healthy living and better health practices, revive the value of community and community-based involvement in social structures that support care and treatment of the most vulnerable within the society, and reinvigorate positive social norms and values around holistic living, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we have identified 10, not exhaustive, but 10 what we classify as the care agenda over the next 2 years, driven by the Ministry of Health, hopefully with the support of community-based groups. And these are causes that we will take on that are not yet concluded in terms of policy positions. So some of this may be advocacy, some of this may be programs that we implement to give support, but nevertheless areas that we will begin with and hopefully accommodate others as we go along. The first, Madam Speaker, is the social media and children. Madam Speaker, Jamaica's digital landscape reflects rapid and widespread adoption with approximately 2.454 million internet users in 2025 and 3.18 million active cell connections. I recall my friend who was on that side, Roger Clark, of blessed memory, saying that he had 2 phones, one for each pocket, and he would dial one and dial the other and answer and talk to himself using the 2 phones. Well, the landscape has gotten a lot more intense in terms of social media impact. Social media penetration is equally significant. 1 million Jamaicans using Instagram, 1.5 1.6 million on Facebook by late 2025, driven by users between the age of 25 and 34. While these platforms, Madam Speaker, have transformed communication, networking, and entrepreneurship, they have also introduced measurable social and psychological strain. Now, the studies are suggesting that among children 0 to 14, 64% report that social media negatively affects their mental health, while 47% of adolescents aged 15 to 19 report similar impact. And this is not unique to Jamaica. Across the Caribbean, we have seen studies around cyberbullying, sexting, emotional distress, suicidal ideation, reinforcing concerns that social media has evolved into a public health issue rather than just a communication tool. And if you look at countries around the world, many are taking action. Indonesia, Greece, Norway, in fact, the UK has championed an online safety act, now require platforms to monitor harmful content, enforce age verification, remove addictive features, and I could go on, Madam Speaker. Here in Jamaica, it's a free-for-all, Madam Speaker. We have research has emerged from 2025-26 to confirm, however, a strong link here in Jamaica between social media use, increasing anxiety, depression, and digital addiction, particularly among our young people. In fact, 36% of Jamaican content creators produce content involving physical altercation, 29% engage in aggressive online behavior, contributing to a broader cultural shift marked by increased vulgarity and a normalization of harmful content. And I must tell you, in this house, we encourage it at times. We go on some of these programs, we promote some of the toxicity that is being promulgated, the hate, the vitriol, and unknowingly, maybe, hopefully, we're doing harm not just to ourselves, but to those we try to provide leadership for. I'm calling on this House, Madam Speaker. The time has come for us to have a serious consideration around the unrestricted access to social media as it relates to our children in particular, Madam Speaker, because it is a problem. The research, as outlined earlier, Madam Speaker, we hope to guide a conversation and certainly to advocate for some changes in this regard. The second, Madam Speaker, is healthy aging. Healthy aging must involve family and community. You know, currently we have, according to the Mona Aging and Wellness Center led by Professor Elimaya Shearer, who is sitting in the gallery, we have approximately 375,000 Jamaicans 60 years and over. That number is expected to grow to 400,000 by 2030 and is growing at a faster rate than birth rate and other age categories. The truth is, we are experiencing a demographic shift, Madam Speaker, a demographic shift that is going to require significant more attention for persons who are 60 years and over, particularly the context in which most have at least one NCD, and in many cases, multiple lifestyle-related diseases. These are our aunts, our mothers, and indeed, in this house, many of us, some of us, it's time to consider this as a serious issue. Madam Speaker, this year we'll be launching geriatric clinics in St. Anne and St. Catherine at a community and district health center. And the intention here is to build out a regime, a policy approach to dealing with those persons over 60 and the particular needs that they have. We'll be combining these efforts with the Ministry of Social Security, National Council for Senior Citizens, and local government and community organizations, Madam Speaker, as part of our intervention at community and family level. The third, Madam Speaker, is menopause and andropause and community support systems. Menopause, Madam Speaker, menopause typically occurs among women in their 40s and 50s. Approximately 240,000 women suffer or fall in this age cohort. And the symptoms are varied: hot flashes, fatigue, mood instability, vaginal dryness, and it can be worse. We have been silent on this issue. And these are our women, our very important productive years of their lives. These are our mothers, our aunts, our sisters, the time has come for us to right-size our health system to respond to this as a problem in order to overcome the challenges that these women face. But the men are not to be left out, because 145,000 men fall in the 51 to 60 age cohort. They are not menopause, by the way. They are andropause. And just to be clear, they are andropause, right? And what this is an age-related condition. That's why you're so miserable, but you don't know. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe. Madam Speaker, this is age-related testosterone decline affects men gradually, typically becoming more evident during that age. Symptoms include reduced libido, erectile dysfunction, fatigue, depression, loss of muscle mass. It's, we know, because we refer to it as midlife crisis. Okay, midlife crisis. Madam Speaker, what the research has shown is that countries with formal menopause strategy achieve more consistent care and better access to services. Today, Madam Speaker, I want to identify which work that has already been done by Professor Shearer and the Aging Committee, which I appointed, and these are the following things which will happen in the months to come. Drafting of a menopause andropause policy, which will go to Cabinet this month. Once approved, will go to the Chief Parliamentary Council. Policy is almost complete based on consultation. A national education health promotion program, training program to ensure that menopause and andropause are covered in health professional curricula, and engaging a consultant to work with professional groups so that we can normalize the conversation. Part of that discussion could be clinical application, medication, and that conversation is taking place. But this year, this will be a major issue. Madam Speaker, this issue affects almost 400,000 Jamaicans and their quality of life. We have to deal with this. The fourth, Madam Speaker, is training for home care for the older persons and disabled. Jamaica already relies on a significant but largely invisible care system for older persons and people living with disabilities at the family and community levels. These are called unpaid caregivers. These are our children, the aunts, the cousin, the neighbor, the church brother or sister. They are the ones who take care of the old person who is at home and are not paid. They do it. They are like the social conscience of family and community. Madam Speaker, the time has come to recognize them and to salute them. And this is not unique to Jamaica. Studies support this across the world. Studies from PAO, IDB, and otherwise. This year, we'll commence a phased pilot of home-based long-term care that includes unpaid caregivers as part of the care team for older persons and persons with disabilities. During the last year, we trained some 148 community health aides. Professor Shearer will oversee a national training program for community caregivers on how to care for older persons and persons with disability. A task force will be established, including the Ministries of Labor and Social Security, local government, churches, community organizations, and aged care organizations, and their main function will be to identify persons for training, ensuring wide community participation. We have already started that dialogue, but Madam Speaker, we must recognize our unpaid caregivers. They number in the thousands and hundreds of thousands, and give them an opportunity to understand how to treat a cousin who has autism, or a 75-year-old mother who has a stroke and don't know how to turn them. That's how we get social cases, because people just don't know how to cope. This is part of family and community which we must take on and address, Madam Speaker. And we are allocating $50 million to this effort, and in the first year, we're hoping to train some 5,000 caregivers, Madam Speaker. The next one is lifestyle clinics, which is number 5. Obesity, of course, is a major challenge contributing to real issues in our society. Madam Speaker, this year we intend to establish lifestyle clinics, one in each region, to look at our life course approach supported by an integrated network of care. The initiative is designed to provide comprehensive, multidisciplinary, patient-centered clinical management. There's a lot of talk about the GLP GLP-1s, the Ozempics and so on, which is now the big conversation around controlling obesity, or some people do it for fashion too, being slim because slim is in. Well, we're not promulgating this as a sole solution, just to be clear. We're really focusing on lifestyle. And what we want to do is establish these clinics where someone who is obese, which is the gateway condition for cardiovascular disease, for hypertension, for diabetes, we need to normalize the conversation around obesity. It's not cool to be obese. It is going to compromise and undermine quality of life, and we need to integrate that into our community and family response. The sixth, Madam Speaker, is fertility and responsible parenting. Bear in mind, we're looking at the social determinants of health, and we're now at 6 of 10. Jamaica's total fertility rate has fallen to some 1.3 child per woman, below the 2.1 replacement rate. This has several implications apart from the economic issues around workforce. Social support system are compromised. Consequences include aging population, rising dependency, reduced domestic economic activity, shrinking human capital. Madam Speaker, the evidence is suggesting that no single intervention reverses declining fertility. And I know that I've been accused of telling people to go and have children. But that's not really what I said. I may be encouraging it, but there are conditions. There are conditions, right? And I'm going to touch on that. So, sustained policy environment of having and raising children, physical, financial, and psychological. Now, when you look at the international data, the data suggests the following. There are 5 pillars that we need to now explore, and we intend over the next year. One is financial support, expanding child credit, tax credits, introducing tiered child allowance, phase responsible parenting initiative grants. Next one is leave and work family reform. We have had maternity and paternity leave, but there are others. The third is affordable child care, subsidizing nurseries and daycare fees, expanding community early childhood centers, introducing universal pre-K for all 4-year-olds, establishing after-school care for primary schools within the work environment. The fourth category is reproductive health, strengthening infertility treatment access within the public health system, launching a national male reproductive health initiative, scaling antenatal education and improving postnatal medical health screening. And the fifth, which is parenting education and communities, scaling evidence-based parenting programs through clinics and schools. Madam Speaker, this is not an announcement of policy, just to be clear, right? Policy is developed, ultimately approved at the level of cabinet. But I believe the time has come for a conversation at the level of communities and families. The consultation with the Minister of Labour and Social Security, we propose a multi-stakeholder national task force on fertility and responsible parenting, drawing membership from health, labor, finance, education, the private sector, academia, and civil society. And the staff task force will produce a national fertility and family support strategy with clear targets, Madam Speaker, subject, of course, to the discussion and agreement of Cabinet. Madam Speaker, let me be clear. The government is not asking Jamaicans to have children for statistical reasons. It is committed to building conditions where family formation is genuinely affordable, structurally supported, and celebrated. The intention is to pursue this initiative to affirm that this government continues to believe that family remains the foundation of the nation's future, Madam Speaker. But there's another issue that's worth noting, and I won't spend much time on it. But the demographic paradox, I classify it as, even as fertility has fallen well below replacement level, issues of paternity uncertainty remains widespread, with research suggesting that roughly 1 in 4 cases may involve misattributed fatherhood. And you know the other term for misattributed fatherhood, right? Okay, fine. Yes, the member from Central St. James has spent a lot of time speaking of it. Together, these dynamics point not just to fewer births, but to deeper challenges around trust, family formation, and the social conditions that shape decisions about having and raising children. Now, this is not the public health implications of misattributed fatherhood are significant, just to be clear. And I could give many other implications, but effects on identity, emotional security, family medical history, mental health issues. The research is very clear that this is something that we should not encourage. Madam Speaker, the truth is, if you're going to live it up, you must also own it up. And I think there needs to be a conversation around paternity issues in our country at this time, because it has implications for the quality of family and community, and also to ensure that there's greater harmony at that level, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the seventh one is period poverty and adolescent health. Period poverty is the inability to afford or access essential menstrual products, education and sanitation facilities. It causes significant health risk, shame and stigma, forcing many to use unsafe alternatives or to miss schoolwork. Key causes include high cost, lack of infrastructure, and systematic inequality. Globally, over 500 women lack access to menstrual facilities. And this is not just for Jamaica. In the US, it's 1 in 4. So it's a problem right across. Madam Speaker, we all must be concerned about period poverty among our young girls in schools. It's not just a hygiene issue, but a systemic barrier that keeps girls out of classroom, undermine their academic potential, and reinforce cycles of inequality and poverty. 1 in 4, Madam Speaker, according to the stats, girls in low-income Jamaica communities miss school during their period due to lack of sanitary products. 30% of public schools provide free menstrual products, and period-related absenteeism is linked to low academic performance and wider gap. This year, Madam Speaker, we will establish the National Menstrual Health Equity Initiative to alleviate period poverty among school-age girls in Jamaica through strategic partnerships with the Ministry of Education and existing civic multilateral groups such as HerFlow and UNICEF. We'll be embarking on a multi-sectorial national menstrual health equity pilot initiative involving 8 schools, approximately 2,000 girls. Schools will be selected based on the high level of path students within the schools. We are allocating some $50 million to this initiative, and coming out of this initiative, Madam Speaker, we hope to achieve a policy around addressing the issue of period poverty in our society. Madam Speaker, we must promote good hygiene and health practices for our young girls. It is important. Part of that campaign on menstrual wellness will include WASH, which is water, sanitation, and hygiene, improvements, HPV vaccination, personal hygiene education, and HIV STI prevention, Madam Speaker. The 8th, Madam Speaker, is Jamaica Moves, and I won't spend much time on this, but we're coming back. We're going to ramp up Jamaica Moves as a community event. Jamaica Moves exists. It's now in the schools, it's now in the communities, but there was a time when everybody wanted a Jamaica Move shirt or a water bottle, including the opposition members who used to dance on stage all over the place when we had executions in the towns. Yes? I remember the member who was at Central Manchester, now in Southern Manchester. He was on the stage dancing with Audley Shaw. Audley beat him, of course. Audley was a much better dancer than him, right? But we're coming back with it, and more will be said on that. That is being worked out. The 9th is mental health and community support, Madam Speaker. Mental health is a real challenge, and it's expanding. But let me just say this. Mental health cannot be solved by institutionalization. It starts in the families and in the communities. And if we don't sensitize the families and the communities to deal with symptoms of mental health and to accommodate, to support, to refer, to address mental health issues, we will never solve the problem. So this one is big in terms of community support. This year we'll be doing a number of things. The National Mental Health Policy will be promulgated. We're going to be training 200 laypersons as part of problem management providers within communities. These are the opinion leaders, members of the church, members of civil society. They must at least be able to recognize and to listen and to refer, as well as 145 psychiatric nursing assistants will be trained this year, and 50 guidance counselors under the school mental health literacy program, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, mental health challenges starts in the home and the communities We have to start there to address the problem, Madam Speaker. The final one, Madam Speaker, the 10 of the social determinants of health is around substance abuse and community support. The National Drug Prevalence Survey shows that the substances most used in Jamaica are alcohol, cannabis, and tobacco. Among this, alcohol remains by far the most dominant. In fact, I said to the National Council on Drug Abuse recently, 2 weeks ago, I said, you probably need to change your name. I'm told I have 15 more minutes. Thank you. I said, we probably need to change your name because Jamaica really doesn't have a cocaine problem of such. Jamaica has an abuse of legal substances problem. And many of them are right on our kitchen table or in our fridge. And they are addictive. And they create the obesity that creates the hypertension and the diabetes. And to the extent that we abuse them, it's a problem. So we're going to be looking at these new substances that are being abused. Some of them are psychoactive substances like Molly and ecstasy and so on, especially among young adults. But we intend to widen that conversation. As a result, Madam Speaker, there are a couple of areas I want to specify that we will intervene on. One of them is energy drinks and alcohol consumption. Everybody know what it's called. It's called special. Special on the street, right? Everybody drinking a special now. Now, let me give you the science of special. Energy drinks are non-alcoholic beverages containing high levels of stimulant, primarily caffeine. Caffeine is a stimulant and alcohol is a depressant. Caffeine masks the feeling of being drunk and encourages binge drinking, higher blood alcohol concentration. When you mix alcohol with energy drink, you mask intoxication, encouraging heavier and more prolonged drinking while amplifying the risky behavior. And there are many risky behaviors. I tell you, I was in the beautiful parish of Westmoreland. And I was at a little place having a little water. Yes, a little water. And talking to some guys, and one of the guys said to me, boss, you saved my life. I said, really, what happened? He said, well, I had an experience, and his friend started to tell me the story. So he had this young lady he had to go meet. And, you know, he has a performance matrix. Let me put it nowhere than that. And that performance matrix involves him purchasing two, not ecstasy tablet, two performance tablets. Yes, two performance tablets, and drink a bottle of energy drink with a pure white rum. I'm not calling any brand name, sir. You call it. I'm not calling it. And after he developed the performance matrix, he jumped on his bike to ride to the location. He ended up in a wall and spent 1 month in the hospital at Sablamar Hospital. Now, let me give you another statistic that tells us that unless we intervene in the community, we have a problem. The last time I toured Sablamar Hospital, 80% of the male surgical wards were occupied by young men riding bikes without helmets. And they occupy the accident and emergency, the surgical wards. It is a real challenge. And 90% of them are intoxicated for whatever reason or whatever motivation. Madam Speaker, we have to intervene. So we are going to be doing a national rapid situation assessment as it relates to the impact of energy drink and alcohol. We're also going to be launching Operation Lighthouse, 50 communities island-wide for substance misuse prevention. We're going to be tackling vaping or anti-vaping, particularly in our schools. Madam Speaker, the vaping materials look like pens and pencils. And we are going to be targeting the suppliers because the National Council on Drug Abuse has the authority to deal with those who are selling vaping materials to underage. Madam Speaker, today I have given you what I classify as a policy pivot towards a more social community family determinants of health. I am encouraging society, NGOs, all concerned, join us in health and as a government. Let us take back our communities Let us promulgate good family values within our society so that we can build a better and more productive society where we can be our brother's keeper as we used to be. That is the real Jamaicanness, Madam Speaker, and I want to promulgate that and advance that over the next year or two. Madam Speaker, I turn now to an accountability framework quickly. Madam Speaker, over the past several months, the Ministry of Health and Wellness and its agencies have been the subject of extensive assessment. The most common one being or most talked about, the Auditor General's report at the UHWI. These reviews have revealed shortcomings in administrative performance and accountability that must now be addressed with urgency and discipline. The findings have prompted a focused policy response in three critical areas: governance and oversight, financial and procurement accountability, and capacity and performance management across the health portfolio. Madam Speaker, we are fully mindful of the constitutional separation between policy, administration, and operation, and the statutory role of boards under the PBMA Act. For the next 12 to 18 months, Madam Speaker, we will be moving to establish internal systems to address a number of the areas that we think are where we have shortcomings. Some are rules that are already in place but need to be enforced, but we will also be imposing some timelines and some appropriate level of sanctions for non-compliance. Financial accountability, Madam Speaker. All regional health authorities will be required to bring their financial statements and reports tabled in Parliament fully up to date within the next 12 months. Boards and regional directors will be held directly accountable for delivery. Health professional councils, many of which are seriously non-compliant, will be required to submit action plans to regularize their financial reporting and to clear at least 10% of their outstanding backlog within the same period. The ministry itself is expected to be current with its appropriations account in compliance with the Financial Administration and Audit Act, and the Permanent Secretary and the relevant central authorities have been mandated to ensure that that takes place within that time. In terms of procurement reform, the over-reliance on direct contracting presents a significant governance risk. Accordingly, from Monday, June 1, 2026, and for a period of 12 months, all direct contracting above statutory threshold, except in the case of the National Health Fund, will require independent validation. Boards will be required to approve certified procurement plans. No financial commitment will be supported outside of the approved plans, and a zero-tolerance approach will be enforced for non-compliance with the Government of Jamaica e-procurement platform and immediate consequences for breaches. In terms of statutory declarations, Madam Speaker, the misuse of income tax, education tax, and NHT deductions to fund operations is unlawful and unacceptable. From Monday, June 1, 2026, a zero-tolerance approach will apply. Executives who authorize or facilitate such breaches will face disciplinary action, including statutory surcharges where applicable, while legacy arrears will be addressed to new statutory liabilities will be permitted. We cannot have people having their monies deducted and not paying over where it needs to be paid over, Madam Speaker. Performance and capacity. All agencies will transition fully to the performance management and appraisal system, PMAS, within 12 months, and at least 70% of organizational functions assessed under PMAS. Same time, a coordinated recruitment initiative. I've asked the regions to hire where they have posts, because part of the excuse of not getting things done is that they don't have enough people. So there's a timeline on this. 75% of vacancies to be filled within 12 months. Governance and oversight, Madam Speaker, and this now involves some of the university issues, a comprehensive legislation review of the health governance framework, including the Health Services Act and the UHWI Act, will be undertaken this year, consistent with the Mitchell Report and Vision for Health 2030. From Monday, June 1, 2026, all internal audit units will submit reports directly to the ministry. This will inform my quarterly oversight meetings with board chairpersons with persistent non-compliance attracting decisive action. This one is important: service delivery and public trust. We have to improve the compassion within our health institutions, how we administer care. Accountability has no meaning if it is not reflected in the patient experience. Therefore, a client-centered, rights-based approach to service delivery is being advanced, supported by measurable services, standards, and satisfaction matrix. and reinforced by transparent public reporting. Madam Speaker, we have established this accountability framework internally. I've met with all the regions, all the board chair, all our public bodies. I've explained it to them, and we intend to move swiftly to ensure that we are compliant as outlined in the presentation. Madam Speaker, I want to close by looking at our legislative agenda. Very important. This year, the ministry will pursue several matters in the legislative agenda, including tobacco, Food and Drug, and Nurse and Midwives Act. Tobacco control bill we expect to be tabled within the next month. This has gone to cabinet. We had a joint select committee. I thank those who have played a role, but that is going to happen momentarily. Food and Drug Amendment Bill seeks to regulate natural health products, including nutraceuticals, under the Food and Drug Act. The amendment bill and regulations are on track for the ministry to proceed with legislative committee this 26-27. Amendment to the Nurses and Midwives Act. Madam Speaker, this is very important. We're well advanced, and this year we intend to come to the Parliament with the Nurses and Midwives Act to give our advanced nursing practitioners more authority. They are the ones who man some of the most remote health centers. If they have to administer a vaccine or write a prescription within limitations, we expect that this year will be the case. Funeral homes regulations, Madam Speaker, we will take to Parliament this year to address the many funeral homes that are unregulated and pose a health risk that is in the final stages. And finally, I want to announce that we will shortly be announcing a committee to review the Public Health Act. I must tell you, I was a little disappointed when COVID struck, and as a health emergency, we could not use the Public Health Act to guide the response, because that's what the Public Health Act should do, but because of shortcomings. So this year, Madam Speaker, we intend to begin a process, which I believe would take about 2 years, to take the most comprehensive piece of legislation guiding health, the Public Health Act, and review that. And we intend to engage a wide cross-section of society in that regard, including members of the opposition, because this is necessary, given all the other advancement that we are making as it relates to public health. Madam Speaker, I apologize in advance for rushing the presentation. I have 3 minutes to go, so I didn't do too badly, House Leader and Madam Speaker. And thank you for helping me by greeting all my colleagues, so that I did not have to do so. But since I have 2 minutes, I want to greet the Prime Minister and the Cabinet. I want to greet my Minister of State, who has been amazing. Can you just give her a round of applause, please? Yeah. She's a champion. She's a champion. She worked hard. And I tell you, don't bother contest her in that seat down in Center, because she's here to stay. And she's a policy maker. I want to recognize my constituents. I know my councillors are here, so many of them, members of the Ministry of Health and Wellness, PSCMO, members of our PAHO and all the other groups, the NGOs that are here. I can't call all the names, but I have the 2 minutes, so I want to just recognize them, because I didn't take the chart. Today is International Nurses Day, and I want to just big up all our nurses. Sorry I couldn't go to the event. Madam Speaker, in keeping with what we do every year, because we know time is limited, we publish limited copies, a lot of information, because we're a transparent government and a transparent ministry. And we want you to have the information. But it's limited, but it will be on the website. So we have vitals. We're looking at sodium and sodium impact, salt, some people call it. We have a glance at tobacco use in Jamaica. We have sweetened beverages consumption in Jamaica, the facts. Jamaica's population health report, 2019 to 2024. Very interesting reading around the decline in our population and birth rate and some of the reasons. Also have a glance at alcohol use in Jamaica. And I believe we have a ministry paper that speaks to all the areas I have not mentioned, because we are a big ministry, as well as our health system strengthening. And just to be totally transparent again, we have tabled a copy of the report of the University Hospital of the West Indies institutional review for all who wants to read and understand what is happening. Madam Speaker, yes, I said that. Madam Speaker, I really want to take the last few seconds to say to the Prime Minister, thank you, sir, for the confidence you have reposed in me over the last 10 years. I am not perfect, and we make mistakes, but we're human. What I will tell you, I have never not engaged anyone who has a criticism, and I do try to ensure that where those criticisms are constructive, I will take them on board. Health is not a partisan issue, and not everything we must try to wring political advantage out of. We must recognize, as they say, today for me, tomorrow for you, and no matter who you are, health and access to health should be a universal principle, and that's how we see it, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, with these announcements, I hope on behalf of the government and all healthcare workers that our mission over the next term is clear: working together for better families, for better communities, collaboratively so, and of course, ultimately, for better health, because that's where it all starts. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. God bless. God bless Jamaica, land we love. Y'all get $1 million.
Yeah.
Right, image level. It's CM General Manager.
Madam Speaker, let us thank the Minister of Health. Definitely, when you see all the infrastructure work that's happening in health in Jamaica, there will be no doubt that this Minister of Health has left an indelible mark. We will now turn to the member from St. Andrew Western for his contribution to the sectorial debate.
In the interest of equity and time, I would like to make special welcome the students here in support of the presentation of the member from St. Andrew Western, the students from Edith Dalton James High School. Welcome to the houses. I also see Senator Keisha Anderson. I'm sure she's also here in support of the member for his sectoral presentation. Welcome to the houses. Members, please make welcome the member from St. Andrew Western, who will now make his presentation to the sectoral debate.
Madam Speaker, permission to speak from a seat other than my own. Permission to speak.
Permission granted.
Thank you. Madam Speaker, I rise at the beginning of my 7th term in this honorable House to make my presentation in the sectoral debate as opposition spokesman on industry, trade, and global logistics. No one can achieve this milestone alone, Madam Speaker. The persons on this journey to be thanked are too numerous to mention, and I don't have the time that the speaker before me does. But I begin by thanking my God, from whom all blessings flow. Then I would thank my family, broadly, Madam Speaker. First of all, my direct family, my daughter, Nile, who is today sitting her CXC exams, and her mother, who I understand choose to be near her today. I want to recognize my other family, both politically in the political party and in the House as a whole, my colleagues on both sides of the House, of the aisle. I thank my party leader, Mr. Mark Golden, leader of opposition, for giving me the opportunity to shepherd this portfolio once again. Madam Speaker, I thank everybody, my councillors who are here and my constituents who are here, but I know they understand in the interest of time, I need to move on. But before I do so, I want to especially thank Ms. Keisha Anderson, my assistant, who made a special effort to be here this afternoon. So thank you, Keisha, for being here. Madam Speaker, there are moments in the life of a nation that demand more than the management of the present. They demand vision, courage, and leadership, willing to confront the future honestly while positioning a country to benefit from what is coming next. This, Madam Speaker, is one of those moments. Jamaica stands at a decisive turning point in global economic history. The architecture of international trade and investment is being redesigned at an extraordinary pace. Supply chains that took decades to build are now being dismantled and redrawn. Entire industries are relocating. New manufacturing corridors are emerging, and strategic alliances are being redefined. The decoupling of the world's two largest economies, the reshaping of global commerce, and creating opportunities that will either be claimed within the decade or lost for generations. And of course, we here in Jamaica have critical infrastructure and an economy to reconstruct in the aftermath of Hurricane Melissa. At one extreme, Madam Speaker, countries are retreating into isolationism, turning inward and threatening the very fabric of global trade, as we once understood it. At the other, there remains hope for stable, rules-based systems grounded in cooperation, predictability, and mutual benefit. The war in Iran and the growing instability across parts of the Middle East have only intensified global uncertainty and deepened the urgency surrounding economic security and supply chain resilience. But let us be honest with ourselves, Madam Speaker. The world is not returning to what it was. What is emerging instead is a more fragmented and competitive global economy, reorganizing into powerful regional blocs, where countries are aggressively positioning themselves to secure supply chains, attract investment, dominate strategic industries, and strengthen regional influence. Other nations, some smaller than Jamaica and with fewer natural advantages, have already made strategic decisions about where they intend to compete. Costa Rica did so in biotechnology and medical devices. Panama did so in logistics and financial services sectors. The Dominican Republic is doing so now in nearshoring and light manufacturing. They are not waiting for certainty or a settled world order. They are moving with urgency because they understand that nations positioning themselves early will shape the next era of prosperity, while those that hesitate will spend the next generation watching. The question before us today is simple. Where is Jamaica positioning? Where is Jamaica positioning itself within this new global reality? Madam Speaker, Jamaica possesses the geographic location, the human capital, the English-speaking workforce, and the proximity to some of the largest consumer markets on earth. We sit astride one of the busiest shipping corridors in the world. We possess a globally recognized cultural influence. We have entrepreneurial people, strategic assets, and enormous untapped potential. But potential without strategy is merely an unrealized opportunity. This is the central indictment of this budget, and it is the central challenge I place before this honorable House today. This government, Madam Speaker, has become very comfortable celebrating numbers. It celebrates fiscal discipline. It celebrates stability. It celebrates the growth of Jamaica's net international reserves. And while those things matter, and while macroeconomic discipline is necessary, the Jamaican people are not living inside spreadsheets. They are living in communities where food and fuel prices continue to rise, where wages struggle to keep pace with the cost of living, and where opportunities for upward mobility feel increasingly out of reach. Young professionals are beginning to question whether Jamaica still offers them a future worth investing in. And too many families are struggling simply to maintain stability in their daily lives. And so the question before this honorable House is not merely whether the government can balance accounts. The real question is whether the economy is producing prosperity that people can actually feel in their lives. Jamaicans cannot eat fiscal credibility. They cannot pay mortgages with macroeconomic statistics. And they cannot build businesses from press releases. The Jamaican people deserve more than mere stability management. They deserve a serious national growth strategy. Capable of producing resilience, opportunity, productivity, and long-term prosperity. Madam Speaker, many of us are familiar with the business parable, who moved my cheese? Its lesson is simple, but profound. Change is inevitable, and those who fail to adapt will inevitably be left behind. Today, as we continue this sectoral debate on the 26-27 budget, I ask this government a very simple question. You clearly see that the cheese has moved. So where is the strategy to find it? Where is the strategy to find the cheese? On this side of the House, we are fair in our assessment. The fiscal consolidation undertaken over the last decade has been substantial. Debt to GDP ratios have declined. Primary surpluses have been sustained. Inflation management has improved. Macroeconomic stability has been real and hard won. Both administrations deserve measured credit for maintaining that discipline because the sacrifices required to achieve it were significant and felt by the Jamaican people. But stability, Madam Speaker, is not development. Stability is simply the foundation upon which development must be built. A stable foundation only matters if something transformative is eventually constructed upon it. And after 10 years, the level of structural transformation Jamaica requires has simply not materialized. The evidence is all around us, Madam Speaker. Manufacturing's contribution to GDP has not significantly expanded. Value-added exports have not meaningfully grown. The trade deficit has ballooned. We remain heavily dependent on tourism, bauxite, and remittances, the same pillars supporting the economy a generation ago. The BPO sector, once heralded as a major source of middle-class opportunity and employment growth, has plateaued and now faces an existential threat from automation and artificial intelligence, a threat this budget barely acknowledges. The logistic hub remains more an aspiration than implementation. Vision 2030, now beyond its midpoint, has seen key structural targets quietly deferred, delayed, and abandoned altogether. Madam Speaker, let us speak honestly about this budget itself. What the Minister of Finance delivered was essentially a hurricane recovery report presented as a growth budget. While we acknowledge the devastating impact of Hurricane Melissa, $12.2 billion in losses, US dollars, nearly 57% of GDP, lives disrupted and livelihood destroyed, acknowledging the crisis is not the same as articulating a strategy for transformation. The Jamaican people deserve more than crisis management. They deserve a coherent plan for growth and national advancement. And the pressures facing ordinary Jamaicans continue to intensify. When oil is trading at nearly US $100 a barrel, while this budget was built on the assumption of US $60 per barrel, someone will pay that difference. It will not be the ministers seated on the government benches. It will be the single mother filling her gas tank. It will be the farmer trying to operate his irrigation pump. It will be the small manufacturer watching electricity costs consume already narrow profit margins. These are the realities confronting Jamaicans every day, realities that cannot be solved by macroeconomic talking points alone. Then we come to MSMEs, the small businesses employing the majority of working Jamaicans. Once again, we heard recycled commitments, verified supplier lists, simplified registration systems, procurement set-asides. We have heard these promises repeatedly over the years. The government may be inclined to point to NARA and FAST as the solution, but those are hoped-for delivery mechanisms, not a comprehensive national growth strategy. And the benefits of NARA and FAST for businesses investing less than US 15 million are highly questionable. Madam Speaker, 1 or 2% growth after a natural disaster is not transformation. It is survival. It is survival. Jamaica deserves more than endurance. It deserves direction. Discipline without direction ultimately becomes endurance without destination. And the Jamaican people, discipline without direction ultimately becomes endurance without destination. And the Jamaican people have endured long enough without seeing the level of transformation their sacrifices were supposed to produce. Madam Speaker, Jamaica has for decades functioned primarily as a trading economy rather than a productive one. We import heavily, distribute locally, and export far too little beyond raw materials and services. This did not happen accidentally. It emerged from deliberate policy choices that consistently favored those who trade over those who produce, those who import over those who manufacture, and those who distribute over those who build. The barriers facing manufacturing are not simply regulatory. They are structural. Energy costs remain among the highest in the region. Trade policies continue to favor import dependency over domestic production. Industrial clustering necessary for achieving scale and competitiveness remains underdeveloped. Bureaucratic delays continue to frustrate productive investment. Access to affordable trade financing remains limited. The result is an economy that protects entrenched commercial interests while linking productive expansion and constraining the ambitions of manufacturers, exporters, and entrepreneurs who want to build and scale within Jamaica and the region. While in opposition, Madam Speaker, the opposition sought to change this trajectory through the logistic hub strategy, a framework designed to transform Jamaica into a globally competitive logistics and production center. It was not merely a slogan. It was intended as a comprehensive economic transformation strategy, linking ports, manufacturing, transportation, logistics, technology, and global trade into a unified framework capable of positioning Jamaica as a major regional player in the future economy. Yet, after 10 years, implementation has stalled. According to the World Bank's Logistic Performance Index, Jamaica now ranks 79 of 139 countries, some 27 places lower than in 2014. That is not progress, it is a regression. Jamaica does not need to limit itself to producing only local raw materials. We can become a value-added manufacturing and logistics platform for the region and the wider hemisphere, assembling, processing, packaging, and exporting goods into global markets. Reverse the trade deficit and you reverse the brain drain, Madam Speaker. But achieving that requires coordination, urgency, infrastructure investment, policy alignment, and above all, strategic direction. Instead, agriculture and agro-processing remain chronically underfunded, manufacturing remains constrained, and trade policies continue protecting merchant interests over productive growth. The result is an economy serving a few while limiting the aspirations of the many. And that is why the middle class increasingly feels squeezed. That is why young professionals increasingly feel uncertain about their future here. That is why so many talented Jamaicans continue leaving. Too many no longer believe the economy is structured to reward production, innovation, entrepreneurship, and long-term investment. Madam Speaker, the Minister's financial sector reforms, including raising pension fund investment limits in private equity from 5% to 7.5%, are not without merit. With pension funds holding approximately 847 billion in invested assets, this could unlock significant capital within the Jamaican economy. But capital without strategy, Madam Speaker, is not development. But Jamaica's problem has never been the absence of savings. Our problem has been the failure to channel those savings into industries capable of expanding exports, creating skilled jobs, driving productivity, and producing long-term economic transformation. The budget speaks extensively about reserves, buffers, capital adequacy, and financial regulation. Far less is said about export diversification, industrial upgrading, logistics reform, innovation policy, digital transformation, workforce development, energy competitiveness, and productivity growth. That imbalance matters deeply because a country cannot save its way into prosperity. Reserves preserve stability, but investment builds wealth. Stability without productive expansion ultimately becomes stagnation managed efficiently. In that context, Jamaica must seriously consider establishing a sovereign wealth fund, especially if the buzz about commercial oil, gold, and rare earth elements ever materialize. Countries that successfully transition from stabilization to prosperity do exactly this. They convert national savings or depleting natural resources into productive national assets, capable of generating long-term returns and strategic development. Imagine what such a fund could support in Jamaica: industrial and logistics expansion around the Port of Kingston, manufacturing growth within the Montego Bay Free Zone, integrated logistics infrastructure surrounding Norman Manley and Sangster International Airport, modern irrigation systems and agro-processing expansion in St. Elizabeth, industrial growth corridors across Clarendon, Manchester, and St. Catherine. These are the kinds of strategic investments that produce long-term national productivity and sustainable economic growth. Yet, this budget contains no comprehensive industrial strategy, no logistics roadmap with measurable targets, no structural export diversification plan, and no robust framework for integrating Jamaican producers into global value chains. Meanwhile, manufacturers continue battling high energy costs, bureaucratic delays, and limited access to affordable trade financing. And all of this is happening while the nearshoring window steadily closes around us. Madam Speaker, the global realignment triggered by US-China decoupling is already redistributing manufacturing investment. Mexico, Vietnam, India, Costa Rica, and the Dominican Republic are aggressively positioning themselves to capture that investment. Independent assessments suggest that the primary nearshoring window may close within 3 to 5 years as major investment decisions become unlocked. Countries acting with urgency will secure industries, jobs, and long-term growth. Countries producing only policy papers and studies will watch those opportunities pass them by. Jamaica cannot afford to be left standing at the terminal while other nations board the flight. Madam Speaker, this government has spent years promoting the ambitions, making Jamaica the logistic hub of the Western Hemisphere. I support that ambition. I've championed it for 14 years because I believe Jamaica possesses the location, infrastructure, potential, and strategic advantages necessary to become a major logistic and trade platform within the region. But ambition must be matched by capacity, execution, and credibility. The contradiction at the center of this administration logistics vision is simple. A government struggling to move people within the Kingston metropolitan area efficiently cannot credibly claim it is ready to manage the logistics of the hemisphere. We cannot organize reliable transportation systems for our own citizens. How can we seriously expect investors to believe we are prepared to coordinate sophisticated global supply chains? And nowhere was this contradiction more painfully exposed than after Hurricane Melissa. Madam Speaker, I watched, as all of us did, while the government's logistical systems struggled under pressure. Recovery materials and supplies entered the island within days. Yet, months later, significant quantities of relief goods and building materials remain trapped within inefficient systems, delayed by weak coordination, customs bottlenecks, and poor logistical management. Communities devastated by the hurricane continued waiting, while supplies sat in warehouses and ports. And what happened next was both inspiring and deeply troubling at the same time. The Jamaican people stepped in where the system failed. Community groups organized relief distribution. Churches became supply centers. Fishermen used their boats to reach isolated communities. Taxi operators formed convoys to transport supplies. Citizens coordinated recovery efforts through WhatsApp groups and social media networks. Ordinary Jamaicans mobilized themselves with extraordinary compassion and efficiency because they understood that their fellow citizens could not wait indefinitely for bureaucracy to function. The people became the logistic hub. The people became the supply chain. The people were resilient, but they did so despite the system, not because of it. And 6 months later, many affected communities were still waiting for assistance that should have reached them months earlier. That failure matters. That failure matters because logistics is logistics. If a government cannot effectively manage the logistics of compassion during a national emergency, how can it credibly manage the logistics of global commerce and industrial expansion? So I ask this government plainly today, where are the goods? Who is accountable for the delays? Who is paying the demurrage and storage charges? What systems are now in place to ensure this failure does not repeat itself, as it will during the next disaster, because there will be another disaster coming? The Jamaican people deserve answers, not excuses. Madam Speaker, real economic transformation requires more than slogans and promotional campaigns. It requires a coherent national architecture. The government must lead in creating the framework within which private investment can thrive. That architecture must connect parish-level productive corridors so that national industrial zone and international logistic networks. It must align trade policy with industrial policy. It must deliver affordable energy, modern infrastructure, reliable transportation systems, and digital connectivity. It must also ensure that skills development aligns with the industries we claim we want to build. That is what a serious growth strategy looks like, and that is precisely what remains absent from this budget. Madam Speaker, 1 year ago, I stood in this honorable House and outlined a framework we call Jamaica 4.0. It was not a speech crafted for headlines or political theater. It was intended as a roadmap for growth, competitiveness, and national transformation. Today, I do not rise simply to repeat that vision. I rise to ask whether Jamaica has moved any closer to building it. On this side of the House, we believe Jamaica's next phase of development must focus on practical, achievable initiatives that deliver visible benefits while laying the foundation for long-term transformation. Central to that vision is unlocking the productive power of Jamaica's MSMEs. Small and medium-sized businesses cannot continue operating at the margins of the economy while carrying so much of the burden for employment and innovation. Madam Speaker, in successful economies, MSME growth is supported by integrated ecosystems in which financing, logistics, digital platforms, technical support, and market access work together cohesively. That is why we support the creation of a national MSME growth and export program capable of delivering low-interest production-linked financing, shared manufacturing and agro-processing facilities, and embedded support for packaging, standard certification, digital commerce, and export readiness. But beyond that, Madam Speaker, we must repurpose national infrastructure to support entrepreneurship and production. One powerful example is the transformation of the Postal Corporation of Jamaica into a national MSME incubator and e-commerce platform. Our post offices should no longer exist merely as traditional mail facilities. They can become digital business hubs, export gateways, fulfillment centers, and logistical support systems serving entrepreneurs in every parish across Jamaica. In partnership with the private sector, this could significantly reduce one of the greatest barriers facing small businesses: the lack of affordable access to logistics, payment systems, technology, and market connectivity. At the same time, the Jamaica Business Development Corporation must evolve beyond administration and become a true market maker capable of securing international retail partnerships, expanding Things Jamaican shelf space globally, and helping local businesses access blended financing opportunities. Real prosperity will not come from a handful of large firms alone. It will come from empowering thousands of Jamaicans to produce, innovate, scale, and export. Madam Speaker, Jamaica's geographic advantage is real, but geography alone is not enough. We must move decisively to develop logistics park linked to ports, highways, airports, and zones. And that can attract manufacturing. Special economic zones must become engines of broad-based growth rather than isolated enclaves, disconnected from surrounding communities. Every logistic investment must create opportunities for Jamaican suppliers, truckers, technicians, contractors, and workers. We must also modernize how logistics governance itself operates. The Port Community System, the PCS, established under the Logistic Hub framework, must become more than a data sandbox. It must function as a coordinating mechanism, bringing together customs, shipping lines, freight forwarders, truckers, warehouses, terminal operators, and regulators. I call it a logistics council, into a unified and accountable system. Jamaica cannot continue treating annual Christmas port congestion as though it were an unavoidable surprise. Efficient logistics systems are built through coordination, planning, accountability, and data discipline. Madam Speaker, none of this transformation will succeed without workforce readiness and human capital development. I recently attended the opening of several new facilities at Edith Dalton James High School, the only high school in my constituency. What stood out to me was not simply the physical expansion, but the vision demonstrated by the school's leadership. Their programs in logistics and supply chain management, music and entertainment, and barbering reflected an important understanding that education must prepare students for the real economic participation. This is the direction Jamaica must move in. We must train for the industries we intend to build, not simply the industries we inherited from the past. Education, vocational training, and workforce development must align with logistics, advanced manufacturing, digital services, cybersecurity, entertainment, and technology. Productivity, Madam Speaker, begins not in boardrooms, but in classrooms. Finally, Madam Speaker, growth must not bypass communities. It must uplift them. This is why we support a community enterprise link program, ensuring that major industrial and logistics developments create opportunities for surrounding communities through local sourcing, supplier development, access to procurement, mentorship, and community investment. Growth must not remain concentrated among the few. It must be inclusive. It must create pathways into ownership, entrepreneurship, and upward mobility for ordinary Jamaicans across every parish of this country. Madam Speaker, Jamaica's founders did not build this nation so future generations could merely manage decline with administrative competence. They built this country so Jamaicans could prosper within it. They built it so that the nurse trained at the University of the West Indies could build a future here, so that the engineer dreaming of modernizing Jamaica's infrastructure could do so at home instead of abroad, so that young Jamaicans could believe their ambitions were achievable within their own country. The generation now in its 20s and 30s will make a defining decision within the next decade, whether Jamaica offers a future worth investing in, and they will make that decision based not on speeches or slogans, but on evidence. They will judge this country based on whether the economy rewards productivity, innovation, education, entrepreneurship, and hard work. 10 years of fiscal discipline have not produced the level of structural transformation Jamaica requires. The economy is not growing at the rate a nation with Jamaica's assets and strategic advantages should be growing. Yeah. I'm wrapping up now. The middle class is increasingly squeezed. Young professionals are increasingly uncertain. 70% of our tertiary educated citizens now live abroad. That is not simply migration, it is a national emergency. The Jamaican people, I'm concluding, Jamaican people are not asking for recklessness. They're asking for vision proportionate to their potential. They want industries capable of creating opportunity. They want infrastructure supporting development. They want housing they can afford. They want wages capable of sustaining half a page. They want wages capable of sustaining families. They want a government capable of looking at the transformation taking place across the global economy and saying clearly, this is Jamaica's strategy. This is our timeline, and this is our plan for capturing the opportunities emerging before us. Madam Speaker, recovery is necessary. Stability is important. But stability without transformation cannot become the ceiling of our ambition. This side of the House has presented a framework for growth. We have identified the contradiction, we have demanded accountability, and remain ready to help build a Jamaica where prosperity is not the privilege of a few, but the shared reality of the many. So the central question before this House remains the same as when I started. Not surprisingly, whether the budget balances, not simply whether the budget balances, but whether the economy grows, whether industry expands, but whether trade diversifies, whether logistics transform, whether the middle class survives, and whether young Jamaicans still believe their future belongs here. Where is the prosperity, resilience, and growth strategy? Thank you, Madam Speaker.
House Leader.
We thank the member for his contribution, which at times appears well-intentioned, even though sometimes he went a little too far. But at times it appeared well-intentioned. We thank the member from St. Andrew Western. Madam Speaker, since we are in public business, and there was a very short bill that was tabled last week that, based on my interactions thus far, it doesn't appear that there are any challenges with it. I would move to take the Conch Export Levy Amendment Act. So let me first move for the suspension of the sectoral debates, just to indicate that the sectoral debates continue tomorrow, where we will hear from the member from Manchester Northwestern and the member from St. James Southern, and also the Minister of Agriculture, Fisheries, and Mining. Madam Speaker, since that minister has 3 portfolios, well, you know that is going to come. So I move for the suspension of the sectoral debates until tomorrow.
Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. House Leader, you will be taking count.
Madam Speaker, the bill, the Conch Export Levy Amendment Act 2026, has as its genesis trying to treat with a challenge which arose when there was the time that the industry went through a lot of difficulty, and persons in the industry would have reached out to the minister to make some adjustments to the methodology in which the Conch levy is paid. As it is now, the requirement by law is that before you ship, which literally means before you collect, you are called upon to pay. And as you can understand, especially with what we have been seeing with the industry over the last few years and with the weather-related events, that has posed some challenges. There was a time that the minister tried to intervene, and upon the advice of the Attorney General, recognized that the power was not so granted under law. And as such, we would have gone to Cabinet, and Cabinet made a decision that the bill will be amended to empower the minister by order subject to affirmative resolution of this House to prescribe the period during which an exporter may pay the levy on conch and extend that period and the manner in which the levy on conch shall be paid, whether in full or in installments, to empower the minister to waive, reduce, or remit the levy on conch under specified circumstances, and to amend the constitution of the Board of Management of the Fund established under Section 10 of the Act. Among the amendments reflected in the bill is the fact that the minister will have the discretion to make an order, again subject to affirmative resolution of this House, to extend the specified period for the payment of the levy on conch payable by the exporter up to a maximum period of 12 months following the granting of an export health certificate and export license for consignment of conch. So in other words, Madam Speaker, the minister is still constrained that any sort of extension cannot go beyond 12 months. The rationale for this amendment is that in the event of a disruption in the fishing season, for instance, severe weather conditions, or other external trade factors, this enlarged period would provide adequate time for an exporter of conch to make the relevant payment of the levy to the Veterinary Services Division. In this regard, the minister will also have the discretion to stipulate whether the levy is to be paid in full or by installments, again, upon affirmative resolution of this House. Further, the minister will also have a discretion to waive, reduce, or remit the levy payable upon the application for an export health certificate and export license where he is satisfied that such waiver, reduction, or remission is justifiable based upon the recommendations from the National Fisheries Authority and the Board of the Fisheries Management and Development Fund after an evaluation of the conditions relating to trade, economic viability, and sustainability of the fisheries sector. It is to be noted that with the amendment to the composition of the board, it is expected to eliminate any possible or perceived conflict of interest. Just to go clause by clause, the bill commences with clause 1, short title and construction. This clause provides the short title of the bill and stipulates that the bill is to be read and construed as one with the Principal Act, the Conch Export Levy Act. Amendment of Section 2 of the Principal Act is contained in clause 2, which intends to amend Section 2 of the Principal Act by inserting the terms exporter, National Fisheries Advisory Council, and National Fisheries Authority, and providing the respective definitions thereof. Clause 3, repeal and replacement of Section 3 of the Principal Act. This clause intends to repeal Section 3 of the Principal Act, which deals with levy on conch export, and replace same with a new Section 3, which stipulates that 3.1, an exporter shall pay a levy on conch exported during a conch season, notwithstanding anything in any other law or enactment or in any agreement to the contrary. 2, on each occasion that the exporter is issued an export health certificate and export license for consignment of conch, the exporter shall pay the levy A, to the Veterinary Services Division, B, at the prescribed rate, C, in the prescribed manner, and D, within the prescribed period. 3, by order subject to affirmative resolution of the House of Representatives, the minister shall prescribe A, the rate at which and manner in which the exporter shall pay the levy, and B, in accordance with subsection 6, the period within which the exporter shall pay the levy, the specified period for payment. 4, the order shall specify A, the conch season to which the order applies, and B, whether the exporter shall pay the levy in full or may pay the levy in installments, and any maximum number of such installments. 5, by order subject to affirmative resolution in the House of Representatives, the minister may extend the specified period for payment in accordance with subsection 6. And 6, the specified period for payment shall A, commence on the date of issue of the export health certificate and the export license for the relevant consignment of conch, and not exceed 12 months, inclusive of any extensions. Clause 4 deals with amendment to the Principal Act by the insertion of Clause 3A, which intends to amend the Principal Act by inserting next after Section 3, Section 3A with the marginal note, waiver, etc. of levy on conch export, which provides that 3A1, upon receipt of an application for an export health certificate and export license, the minister may, subject to subsection 2, waive, reduce, or remit the levy, notwithstanding the requirement to pay a levy under section 3. 2, the minister may waive, reduce, or remit the levy if the minister is satisfied that the National Fisheries Authority and the board have both recommended the waiver, reduction, or remission of the levy after evaluation of the conditions related to trade, economic viability, and sustainability of the fisheries sector, and B, the waiver, reduction, or remission of the levy is in the public interest. 3, where the minister waives, reduces, or remits the levy, the minister shall notify the applicant in writing of the decision to do so and the reason for that decision. Clause 5, the amendment of the Schedule of the Principal Act. This clause intends to amend the Schedule of the Principal Act by repealing paragraph 1 thereof, which deals with the constitution of the board, and replacing same with the following. The board shall comprise 9 members, being 6 ex officio members as specified in some paragraph 2, and B, subject to some paragraph 3, 2 representatives of the fisheries industry and 1 representative of the Jamaica Fishermen Cooperative Union Limited. The ex officio members shall be the Chief Technical Director in the Ministry responsible for fisheries, a senior fisheries officer in the National Fisheries Authority nominated by the Chief Executive Officer of the National Fisheries Authority, a senior veterinary officer in the Veterinary Services Division nominated by the Director of Veterinary Services, an attorney at law in the Ministry responsible for fisheries, senior officer in the Finance and Accounts Division of the Ministry responsible for fisheries, and the chairman of the National Fisheries Advisory Council. Each member referred in subparagraph 1B shall be nominated by the minister and approved by cabinet. And then there's a memorandum of objects reasons for the bill. Just to indicate, we had gone through a extensive discussion in relation to CONC when we brought the order. And I think one of the points the member raised, that's a member from Eastern Westmoreland, when he spoke about the amount of the levy, is whether we would have the authority to do away with the levy in light of the circumstances. I had indicated at that time we would not have it, but we are taking steps. These are the steps that we now take. I commend the bill to the House.
Member from Eastern Westmoreland.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We did have a discussion when we look at the order in March. And as the minister said, some of the amendments here are in line with the points that I was making then. That with Jamaica receiving MSc certification for CONC, and for the members, MSc here is not Masters of Science. It's Marine Stewardship Council. Having received that certification, which I think is the first in the world, that we needed to look at how we can deal with these members especially when they would have suffered from some disaster. And so I am supporting the proposed amendments that will ensure that the government of the day and the minister is able to respond to those challenges, and you're able to waive, if necessary, the fees, and especially to look at the levy, because as I had pointed out then, that with 50 cents per pound, US cents per pound, that if you gave somebody a quota of 100,000 pounds, that they would have to find 50,000 US upfront. And I thought that that was a little bit onerous, and that the amendment to ensure that those persons can make the payment in part or make it after they have gotten sale for their produce is commonsensical and therefore has my full support. May it please you, Madam Speaker. Thank you.
House Leader.
I thank the member, and as such, I close the debate and ask that we go to committee stages to consider the bill. I ask for the second reading of the bill.
Question is that the bill be read a second time. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
A bill entitled An Act to Amend the Conch Export Levy Act read a second time.
We have space. Can come down. Have space.
Madam Speaker,
Too early.
we can put
I came down too early.
yeah, man, just say.
The House will now resolve itself into a committee of the whole House to consider the bill clause by clause.
Madam Speaker, if you are minded, we could put clause, but let's put clause 1. Can put clause 1 through to 5, no changes.
I put clauses 1 through 5. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those against? The ayes have it.
Can put the memorandum. Oh, we don't need to put the memorandum.
I put the title and enacting clause. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those against? The ayes have it. I do report the bill as having passed committee stage without amendment. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. I do report the bill as having passed committee stage without amendments. Minister?
Madam Speaker, I ask for the bill be read a third time.
The question is that the bill be read a third time. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
A bill entitled An Act to Amend the Conch Export Levy Act read a third time and passed.
Madam Speaker, I now ask for the recommittal of all the agenda items leading up to public business.
Statement by ministers. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. Statement by ministers. Announcements.
Laid on the table of the House are the following. Annual report of the Financial Services Commission for the financial year 2022-2023 and its related ministry paper numbered 30 of 2026 titled Annual Report of the Financial Services Commission for the year ended March 31, 2023. Annual report and audited financial statement of the Electoral Commission of Jamaica for the financial year 2024-2025. Auditor General's Department, Hurricane Melissa Relief Initiative Audit Compliance Report, Financial Management of Donated and National Disaster Funds, and the implementation of the Roof Restoration Project. And finally, the retabling of the Auditor General's Department's Performance Audit Report, Management of the Production Incentive Program by RADA. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Bills brought from the Senate. Clerk.
The following is a message from the President of the Senate to the Honorable House of Representatives. I have the honor to advise the Honorable House of Representatives that on the 8th day of May 2026, a bill entitled An Act to Make Provision for the Management and Implementation of the Post-Disaster Reconstruction and Resilience Efforts consequent on the passage of Hurricane Melissa, and for resilience generally to establish the National Reconstruction and Resilience Authority, and for connected matters was passed in the Senate without amendment. Honorable Thomas Tavares Finson, President of the Senate.
Petitions, papers, reports from committees, notices of motions given orally.
Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the House, I will move to introduce and have read a first time a bill shortly entitled the National Housing Trust Amendment Special Provisions Act 2026. I further beg to give notice that at a later stage today, I will move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take first reading of the bill.
Questions and answers to questions. Motions that may be made at the commencement of public business requiring notice. Motions that may be made at the commencement of public business requiring notice, motions relating to the sitting of the House, motions for leave to introduce bills, presentation of bills without leave of the House first obtained. Minister of Finance.
Madam Speaker, I now move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take the first reading of a bill shortly entitled the National Housing Trust Amendment Special Provisions Act 2026.
Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
Madam Speaker, I now move that a bill shortly entitled the National Housing Trust Amendment Special Provisions Act 2026 be read a first time.
Thank you. Clerk.
A bill shortly entitled the National Housing Trust Amendment Special Provisions Act 2026 be read a first time.
Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice of second reading of the bill.
House Leader.
Madam Speaker, it is not intended to do any further business today, so I ask that the House be adjourned until tomorrow.
Members, I will announce it on adjournment as said by the Minister of Health. He says that there are some goodies in the room, including $1 million per member of parliament to be picked up. Do not rush. To be used for health purposes in your respective constituencies. He didn't say. So as indicated by the House Leader, there will be no other business for today. We adjourn until tomorrow at 2 p.m. sharp. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. This honorable House now stands adjourned.